Reflections on Resistance, The Maccabean Story, by Rev. Virgilio Almario de las Armas. Preface. The story of the Maccabees is one of defiance, faith, and the unyielding spirit of a people who refused to surrender their identity. Reflections on Resistance, The Maccabean Story is not just a retelling of a historical uprising, it is an exploration of what it means to stand against oppression, to fight for one's beliefs, and to preserve a legacy that extends far beyond the battlefield. This book aims to bring the Maccabean struggle to life, weaving together historical accounts, reflections on resistance, and the enduring relevance of this story in our world today. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear but the will to overcome it. Whether you are drawn to history, intrigued by stories of rebellion, or searching for meaning in the struggles of the past, I invite you to embark on this journey. The Maccabees story is not just theirs, it belongs to all who have ever fought for freedom. Dedication. To those who stand firm in the face of adversity. To those who refuse to let their voices be silenced. To those who carry the fire of resistance in their hearts. This book is for you. Description. The Maccabean Revolt was more than a military struggle, it was a fight for survival, faith, and identity. Reflections on Resistance, the Maccabean story delves into the events that shaped this uprising, from the oppressive rule of the Seleucid Empire to the courageous stand of Judah Maccabee and his followers. Through historical analysis, narrative retellings, and thematic reflections, this book examines the deeper significance of the Maccabees' resistance. What drove them to rise against an empire? How did their actions shape Jewish history and inspire future movements of defiance? And what lessons can we draw from their story today? This book offers an engaging and thought-provoking journey through one of history's most remarkable revolts, shedding light on the enduring power of resistance and the timeless struggle for freedom. Table of Contents. Chapter 1. Historical Context of the Maccabean Revolt. The Rise of Hellenism. Jewish society under Seleucid rule. Key figures in the Maccabean narrative. Chapter 2. The Maccabean family. Mattathias and the call to arms. Judah Maccabee, the warrior leader. The role of Jonathan and Simon. Chapter 3. The nature of resistance. Religious versus political resistance. Strategies and tactics of the Maccabees. The impact of guerrilla warfare. Chapter 4. The significance of the Hanukkah miracle. Origins of the festival. The miracle of the oil. Hanukkah as a symbol of resistance. Chapter 5. The Maccabean legacy. Historical impact on Jewish identity. Influence on later resistance movements. The Maccabees in contemporary culture. Chapter 6. Theological reflections. Faith and divine intervention. The role of martyrdom in Maccabean thought. Lessons on perseverance and hope. Chapter 7. Comparative resistance movements. The Maccabees and other historical resistance. Modern parallels in social movements. The universal themes of struggle and liberation. Chapter 8. Conclusion. Reflections on resistance. The enduring spirit of the Maccabees. Lessons for future generations. The relevance of the Maccabean story today. Chapter 1. Historical context of the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt was not an isolated event, it was the culmination of decades of cultural tension, political oppression, and religious persecution. To understand the significance of this rebellion, we must first examine the world in which it took place, a world dominated by Hellenistic rule, where empires clashed, traditions were challenged, and a small but determined people refused to be assimilated. This chapter provides the historical foundation for the Maccabean struggle. It explores the rise of Hellenism, the impact of Seleucid rule on Jewish society, and the key figures who shaped this turbulent period. In doing so, we gain a deeper appreciation for the forces that led to one of history's most remarkable uprisings, a revolt not only for national independence but for the survival of a people's faith and identity. The rise of Hellenism. The world of the 2nd century BC was deeply influenced by the legacy of Alexander the Great. His conquest had spread Greek culture across vast territories, from Egypt to Persia, creating what historians call the Hellenistic world. This was not merely a political transformation, it was a cultural revolution. Greek language, philosophy, and customs became dominant, reshaping societies and challenging older traditions. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire fragmented into several successor states, each ruled by one of his generals. Among these, the Seleucid Empire controlled the region of Judea, ruling over a diverse population that included Jews, Greeks, Persians, and other ethnic groups. The Seleucid kings, particularly Antiochus III and his son Antiochus IV Epiphanes, sought to unify their empire through Hellenization, the promotion of Greek customs, governance, and religious practices. For some, Hellenism represented progress and opportunity. Greek philosophy, art, and literature were admired across the known world, and many Jews, particularly those in the upper classes, embraced elements of Greek culture. Cities such as Jerusalem saw the construction of gymnasiums, theaters, and other institutions modeled after those in Greece. However, for many others, Hellenization posed an existential threat. Greek religious practices, which often involved idol worship and deification of rulers, stood in direct opposition to Jewish monotheism. As Seleucid policies became more aggressive, tensions escalated, setting the stage for conflict. Jewish society under Seleucid rule. At first, the Seleucid rulers allowed the Jews a degree of autonomy in religious and civic matters, as long as they paid taxes and remained loyal to the empire. However, this balance was fragile. Internal divisions within Jewish society further complicated matters. Two factions emerged. Hellenized Jews, who saw Greek culture as a path to social advancement and adapted elements of it into their daily lives. Many of these individuals held positions of power, including within the Jewish priesthood. Traditionalists, who resisted Hellenization and viewed Greek influence as a direct threat to their faith and identity. Tensions reached a breaking point under the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, 175 to 164 BCE. Seeking to solidify his control, he intensified efforts to impose Hellenistic culture on the Jewish population. His most drastic measures included the desecration of the temple in Jerusalem, where he erected an altar to Zeus and outlawed traditional Jewish sacrifices. The banning of Jewish religious practices, including circumcision, Sabbath observance, and Torah study. The execution of those who refused to comply, leading to a period of severe persecution. For many Jews, these actions were not simply oppressive laws, they were an existential attack on their faith. Antiochus' policies ignited widespread outrage, and from this fire of oppression, the Maccabean Revolt was born. Key figures in the Maccabean narrative. The Maccabean Revolt was led by an extraordinary family of priests, the Hasmoneans, who would later be remembered as the Maccabees. Their leadership transformed what began as a desperate resistance into a movement that would change history. Mattathias the priest, the spark of rebellion. Mattathias, a priest from the town of Modiin, was the first to openly defy Seleucid rule. When a royal official demanded that he offer a pagan sacrifice, Mattathias refused and killed both the officer and a Jewish collaborator. His act of defiance marked the beginning of armed resistance. He and his 5 sons fled to the wilderness, where they gathered followers and launched a guerrilla war against the Seleucid forces. Judah Maccabee, the hammer of resistance. After Mattathias' death, leadership passed to his son Judah, known as Maccabee, meaning the hammer. A brilliant military strategist, Judah led a series of daring attacks against vastly superior Seleucid forces. Using guerrilla tactics, he and his fighters ambushed enemy troops, disrupted supply lines, and slowly reclaimed Jewish territory. Under Judah's leadership, the Maccabees achieved a stunning victory. They recaptured Jerusalem and purified the desecrated temple in 164 BCE, an event commemorated in the festival of Hanukkah. This victory, however, was only one stage of a longer struggle. Jonathan and Simon, the fight for autonomy. After Judah's death in battle, his brothers Jonathan and Simon continued the resistance. Jonathan played a key role in securing political alliances, while Simon eventually achieved full independence for Judea, establishing the Hasmonean dynasty. The significance of resistance. The Maccabean Revolt was more than a military conflict, it was a battle for the soul of a people. It demonstrated the power of faith in the face of oppression, the resilience of a community determined to preserve its identity, and the ability of a small but determined force to defy a great empire. This chapter has provided the historical backdrop against which the Maccabees rose. In the chapters that follow, we will explore their battles, their victories, and the lasting legacy of their struggle. Their story is one of courage, sacrifice, and unwavering resistance, an inspiration for all who fight for freedom in every era. Chapter 2: The Maccabean Family. A Legacy of Defiance. The Maccabean Revolt did not arise from a single moment of rebellion but from generations of faith, identity, and resistance. At its heart was the Maccabean family, men who were not kings, generals, or political elites but priests from a small Judean town. Yet, their unwavering commitment to their people and faith transformed them into leaders of one of the most remarkable revolts in history. From the patriarch Mattathias to his warrior son Judah and the steadfast leadership of Jonathan and Simon, the Maccabean family carried the weight of a people's struggle. They were not driven by a thirst for power but by a calling to restore the sanctity of their traditions, protect their homeland, and resist the forces that sought to erase their identity. Their story is one of sacrifice and triumph, a testament to the power of conviction in the face of overwhelming odds. Mattathias and the call to arms. Every great uprising has its spark, and for the Maccabees, that spark was Mattathias. A priest from the town of Modin, Mattathias was a man of deep faith, known for his piety and commitment to Jewish law. But when the Seleucid Empire, under the rule of Antiochus IV, sought to impose Greek customs, outlaw Jewish practices, and desecrate the temple, he was faced with a choice: compliance or defiance. The moment came when a royal official arrived in Modin, demanding that Mattathias set an example by offering a pagan sacrifice. The pressure must have been immense. Compliance could have brought him favor, while defiance would mean certain punishment. But Mattathias refused. His faith was not for sale. When another Jew stepped forward to comply, Mattathias, in a moment of righteous fury, struck him down, along with the official enforcing the decree. This was not just an act of rebellion, it was a declaration of war. With that single strike, Mattathias ignited the resistance. He and his sons fled to the hills, calling upon others to join them. Though he would not live to see the full extent of the revolt, his defiance set everything in motion. His actions proved that oppression could be resisted, that submission was not the only path. Mattathias became the first flame of a fire that would soon rage across Judea. Judah Maccabee, the warrior leader. If Mattathias was the spark, Judah Maccabee was the wildfire. The third son of Mattathias, Judah emerged as the leader of the rebellion after his father's death. Though not a trained soldier, he possessed a rare combination of courage, strategic brilliance, and unwavering faith. Under Judah's command, the Maccabees transformed from a ragtag group of rebels into a formidable fighting force. They were vastly outnumbered and outmatched, facing the well-trained Seleucid army with its cavalry, or elephants, and seasoned generals. Yet Judah refused to be intimidated. He understood that the strength of an army was not merely in its numbers but in its cause. Judah employed guerrilla warfare, using the terrain of Judea to his advantage. He struck at night, ambushed enemy convoys, and outmaneuvered far superior forces. Victory after victory bolstered the morale of his people, proving that resistance was not futile. The battles of Beth Horon, Emmaus, and Beth Zur stand as testaments to his military genius. But Judah was more than just a warrior, he was a leader who inspired through faith. Before each battle, he called upon his fighters to trust in God, reminding them that they were not just fighting for land but for their beliefs, their families, and their very identity. His rallying cry echoed through history: "It is not the size of the army that matters, but the strength of the cause." His greatest triumph came when he led his forces to reclaim Jerusalem and rededicate the desecrated temple. The miracle of Hanukkah, commemorating the restoration of the temple's menorah, became a lasting symbol of the Maccabean victory. Yet Judah's fight did not end there. He continued to battle the Seleucid forces until his final stand at Elasa, where he fell in battle. His death, however, did not mark the end of the movement. His brothers would continue the fight, ensuring that his legacy endured. The role of Jonathan and Simon. While Judah's victories had secured the survival of the Jewish people, it was his brothers Jonathan and Simon who ensured the long-term success of the Maccabean cause. They were not only warriors but also statesmen, guiding Judea toward a new era of independence. Jonathan, the diplomat and high priest. After Judah's death, the Maccabean movement faced a critical moment. The Seleucid forces sought to regain control, and internal divisions threatened to unravel everything Judah had fought for. It was Jonathan, the youngest of the 5 Maccabean brothers, who stepped up. Unlike Judah, Jonathan's strength lay in diplomacy. He understood that resistance was not only fought on the battlefield but also in the political arena. Through careful negotiation and shifting alliances, he maneuvered between rival factions within the Seleucid Empire, securing Judea's autonomy. His leadership was instrumental in establishing the Maccabees as more than just a band of rebels. Under him, they became a recognized power. His most significant achievement was his appointment as high priest, marking the beginning of Hasmonean rule over Judea. By blending religious and political authority, Jonathan solidified the Maccabees' influence, ensuring that their resistance did not fade after the battles ended. Simon, the builder of a nation. Simon, the last surviving son of Mattathias, would take Judea to its final step toward full independence. While his brothers had fought and negotiated for survival, Simon focused on consolidation and governance. He strengthened Judea's fortifications, secured lasting peace, and formalized Jewish self-rule. Under Simon, the Seleucids officially recognized Judean independence, ending years of foreign domination. He established the Hasmonean dynasty, ensuring that the leadership of Judea remained in the hands of those who had fought for it. More than just a military leader, Simon was a nation builder, proving that resistance is not only about overthrowing oppression but about creating something lasting in its place. The legacy of the Maccabean family. The Maccabean family's legacy is one of faith-driven resistance, of standing firm when the odds seem impossible. They were not born into power, nor were they chosen by any earthly ruler. What set them apart was their unshakable belief in their cause, the belief that freedom, faith, and identity were worth fighting for, even at the cost of their lives. Their story is not just ancient history, it is a lesson for every generation that faces oppression, every people who refuse to be erased. Whether through defiance, strategy, diplomacy, or governance, the Maccabees remind us that resistance takes many forms, but it always begins with the courage to say no. Their battle cry still echoes through history, "Whoever is for God, follow me." Chapter 3, The Nature of Resistance. Resistance is never a singular act, it is a continuous struggle shaped by purpose, strategy, and sacrifice. The Maccabean Revolt was not merely an armed rebellion, it was a profound assertion of identity, faith, and autonomy in the face of overwhelming oppression. At its core, this resistance was both religious and political, employing innovative strategies that defied conventional warfare and altered the course of Jewish history. To understand the full impact of the Maccabee struggle, we must examine its dual nature, how it functioned as both a spiritual battle for religious freedom and a political uprising against foreign rule. We must also explore the tactics that turned a small band of rebels into a formidable force, and how their mastery of guerrilla warfare reshaped the battlefield and ultimately secured their victory. Religious versus political resistance. For the Maccabees, resistance was inseparable from their faith. The Seleucid Empire, under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, sought to erase Jewish religious practices, replacing them with Hellenistic customs and forcibly integrating Jewish society into the broader Greco-Syrian culture. This was not just political subjugation, it was cultural erasure. The banning of circumcision, the desecration of the temple in Jerusalem, and the enforced worship of Greek gods struck at the heart of Jewish identity. Thus, The revolt was more than a fight for political independence. It was a battle for the right to worship freely, to preserve sacred traditions, and to uphold the covenant with God. The Maccabees saw their struggle as divinely mandated, framing their resistance in religious terms. Judah Maccabee and his followers viewed their fight as a holy war, not just a rebellion against foreign rule but a defense of their faith and way of life. At the same time, their movement was also deeply political. The Hasmonean Revolt laid the groundwork for Jewish self-rule, leading to the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty, which ruled an independent Judea for nearly a century. The Maccabean struggle, therefore, highlights the complex interplay between religious conviction and political ambition, an intersection that has shaped countless resistance movements throughout history. Strategies and tactics of the Maccabees. The Maccabees faced a seemingly insurmountable challenge. They were vastly outnumbered, poorly equipped compared to the well-trained Seleucid armies, and lacking in conventional military resources. Yet, through ingenuity, discipline, and unwavering determination, they turned their disadvantages into strengths. Guerrilla warfare and asymmetrical tactics. The Maccabees understood that they could not defeat the Seleucids in open field battles, where superior numbers and cavalry would overwhelm them. Instead, they adopted guerrilla tactics, launching ambushes in the rugged Judean hills, striking swiftly, and retreating before the enemy could mount a full response. They used their knowledge of the terrain to set traps, disrupt supply lines, and wear down the Seleucid forces over time. Religious and psychological warfare. The Maccabees framed their cause as a divine mission, strengthening the morale of their fighters. They invoked biblical history, likening their struggle to the victories of Joshua, David, and the judges of Israel. This spiritual dimension infused their warriors with a sense of destiny, inspiring them to fight despite overwhelming odds. Mobilizing the population. Resistance is strongest when it is rooted in the people. The Maccabees did not fight alone. They rallied Jewish villagers, priests, and rural communities to their cause, turning the rebellion into a widespread movement rather than an isolated insurrection. By presenting themselves as protectors of Jewish identity and religious freedom, they secured the support of ordinary citizens, who provided food, shelter, and intelligence on enemy movements. Strategic alliances. While the Maccabees initially stood alone, they later formed alliances with external powers, most notably Rome, which was emerging as a dominant force in the Mediterranean. This political maneuvering demonstrated their ability to balance religious conviction with pragmatic statecraft, ensuring that their fight had both divine and diplomatic backing. The impact of guerrilla warfare. The Maccabees' use of guerrilla tactics not only secured their victory but also changed the way resistance movements were fought in the ancient world. Their success demonstrated that small, determined forces could defeat mighty empires through strategy, adaptability, and perseverance. This lesson has resonated throughout history, influencing countless uprisings and movements of national liberation. The long-term effects of their resistance extended far beyond the battlefield. The eventual rededication of the Second Temple, celebrated today as Hanukkah, became a powerful symbol of survival and renewal. The Hasmonean dynasty, which emerged from the revolt, laid the foundation for later Jewish sovereignty. Even after the fall of the Hasmonean kingdom, the legacy of Maccabean resistance continued to inspire future generations, from the Zealots at Masada to modern struggles for religious and political freedom. Conclusion: the eternal struggle for freedom. The Maccabee story is not merely an episode of Jewish history, it is a universal narrative of defiance against tyranny. It reminds us that resistance is not always about sheer strength, but about strategy, unity, and an unbreakable belief in one's cause. Their fight was not just for themselves, but for the generations to come, a legacy of resilience that continues to inspire those who refuse to be silenced. In every age, new battles for freedom arise, whether against political oppression, religious persecution, or cultural erasure. The Maccabees teach us that resistance is not just about surviving the present, it is about securing the future. Their story challenges us to ask, what are we willing to stand for? What is worth fighting for? And how do we ensure that the light of freedom, once kindled, never fades? Chapter 4: The Significance of the Hanukkah Miracle. The story of Hanukkah is more than a festival of lights. It is a testament to resilience, faith, and the power of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Emerging from the ashes of war and oppression, Hanukkah serves as both a historical commemoration and a timeless symbol of defiance against tyranny. This chapter explores the origins of the festival, the legendary miracle of the oil, and the deeper meaning of Hanukkah as a beacon of resistance throughout history. Origins of the festival. The celebration of Hanukkah finds its roots in one of the most pivotal moments of Jewish history, the Maccabean Revolt, 167 to 160 BCE. The Jewish people, under the oppressive rule of the Seleucid Empire and the tyrannical decrees of King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, faced an existential threat to their faith and way of life. Antiochus not only outlawed Jewish religious practices but also desecrated the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, erecting an altar to Zeus within its sacred walls and defiling it with pagan sacrifices. In response, a small but determined group of Jewish rebels, led by Judah Maccabee and his brothers, launched a guerrilla war against the powerful Seleucid army. Against all odds, the Maccabees reclaimed Jerusalem, purified the temple, and rededicated it to the worship of God. Their victory was not merely a military triumph, it was a spiritual and cultural rebirth, ensuring the survival of Jewish identity. The festival of Hanukkah, meaning dedication, was established to commemorate this victory and the rededication of the temple. What began as a national celebration of freedom soon grew into a lasting tradition, one that would inspire countless generations to remember that even in the darkest times, faith and perseverance can lead to renewal. The miracle of the oil. While the Maccabees' military success was extraordinary, it was the miracle that followed that cemented Hanukkah as a deeply spiritual observance. According to tradition, when the victorious Jewish forces sought to rekindle the temple's menorah, the sacred lampstand that symbolized divine presence, they found only a single flask of pure olive oil, enough to burn for just one day. Yet, in what was seen as an act of divine intervention, the oil lasted for 8 days, the exact time needed to prepare more consecrated oil. This miracle became the heart of Hanukkah's observance, symbolizing not only God's favor but also the enduring strength of faith in the face of adversity. The lighting of the Hanukkah, the special 9-branch menorah, serves as a reminder of this event. Each night, an additional candle is lit, gradually increasing the illumination, representing the spreading of light over darkness. While some historians debate the origins of this miracle, arguing that it was a later rabbinic embellishment, its significance remains profound. Whether one views it as a literal event or as a symbolic representation of Jewish perseverance, the message is clear: even when hope seems scarce, faith can sustain us far beyond our expectations. Hanukkah as a symbol of resistance. Hanukkah is more than a historical commemoration, it is a symbol of resistance that has echoed throughout history. It represents the defiance of oppression, the fight for religious freedom, and the enduring will of a people who refuse to be extinguished. The Maccabee struggle did not end with their victory. Jewish history is marked by repeated attempts to erase their identity, from the Roman destruction of the Second Temple to the persecutions of later empires and regimes. Yet, each time, the Jewish people have endured, and Hanukkah has remained a source of inspiration, reminding them and the world that resistance is not futile, and that faith, culture, and heritage are worth fighting for. In modern times, Hanukkah has taken on new layers of meaning. For Jewish communities around the world, it serves as a celebration of religious freedom, a call to stand against injustice, and a reminder that even a small light can dispel great darkness. The festival has been embraced not only as a commemoration of an ancient victory but as a rallying cry for all who seek to preserve their identity in the face of assimilation and oppression. The lighting of the Hanukkah in homes, public spaces, and even in places where Jewish practice was once forbidden is a powerful act of defiance. Whether in Soviet Russia, where practicing Judaism was dangerous, or in the aftermath of the Holocaust, when survivors rekindled their traditions, Hanukkah has symbolized the unbreakable human spirit. Conclusion: the light that never fades. The Hanukkah story is not simply about the past, it is a message for all generations. It teaches that resistance is not only waged with weapons but also with unwavering faith, with the determination to uphold one's identity, and with the belief that light, no matter how small, will always have the power to overcome darkness. As the Hanukkah candles are kindled each year, they serve as a reminder that miracles, whether supernatural or forged by human resilience, are real. The Maccabees' legacy lives on in every individual and community that refuses to surrender to oppression, that holds fast to their traditions, and that dares to shine even in the darkest of times. Chapter 5: The Maccabean Legacy. The story of the Maccabees is not merely an episode of ancient history, it is a living testament to the power of resistance, faith, and perseverance. Long after the dust of battle settled and the Hasmonean dynasty rose to power, the legacy of the Maccabees continued to shape Jewish identity, inspire future movements of defiance, and find new meaning in contemporary culture. Their struggle was not just about reclaiming the temple but about preserving a way of life against forces that sought to erase it. Today, their legacy endures in ways they could never have imagined, reminding us that the fight for freedom is never confined to a single time or place. Historical impact on Jewish identity. The Maccabean Revolt was more than a military victory, it was a declaration of self-determination. Before the revolt, Jewish life in Judea was threatened by Hellenization, a cultural and religious assimilation imposed by the Seleucid rulers. The Maccabees' defiance preserved not just sacred traditions but also the idea that Judaism was worth fighting for, even at great cost. Their victory led to the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty, the first period of Jewish self-rule in centuries, which lasted for over a century until the arrival of Rome. This era of independence left a lasting imprint on Jewish consciousness, proving that survival was not just a matter of endurance but of active resistance. The festival of Hanukkah, instituted to commemorate the rededication of the temple, became more than a holiday, it became a symbol of perseverance. Over centuries of exile, persecution, and diaspora, the Maccabees served as an enduring reminder that Jewish identity was not to be passively accepted but actively defended. Their story reinforced the belief that no matter how great the opposition, faith and resilience could prevail. Influence on later resistance movements. The Maccabean legacy did not end with their victory, it echoed throughout history, influencing countless uprisings and movements that fought against oppression. Their courage and defiance became a blueprint for those who refused to submit to tyranny. During the Jewish-Roman Wars, 66 to 135 CE, including the famed Last Stand at Masada, Jewish rebels drew inspiration from the Maccabees, seeing themselves as their spiritual descendants. Though the Romans ultimately crushed these revolts, the spirit of resistance remained alive. Centuries later, during the Middle Ages and into modern times, Jewish communities facing persecution looked to the Maccabees as symbols of hope. In the 20th century, Zionist pioneers and leaders of the Jewish resistance in Nazi-occupied Europe invoked the Maccabean spirit. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, 1943, was often compared to the Maccabean Revolt, as Jewish fighters took up arms in a desperate struggle for survival. Even today, the ethos of the Maccabees resonates in movements advocating for religious freedom, national self-determination, and the right of marginalized groups to resist cultural erasure. Their story continues to be a rallying cry for those who refuse to be subdued by oppression. The Maccabees in contemporary culture. The influence of the Maccabees extends far beyond history books. Their legacy is woven into religious traditions, political rhetoric, literature, and even popular culture. Hanukkah, the holiday that emerged from their victory, has evolved into one of the most widely celebrated Jewish festivals, symbolizing the triumph of light over darkness. Its themes of resilience and faith resonate not only with Jewish communities but also with broader audiences seeking inspiration in the face of adversity. In modern Israel, the Maccabees are often invoked in discussions about national identity and military strength. The name Maccabee is used for sports teams, youth movements, and institutions that promote Jewish pride and physical endurance. The Maccabean Games, known as the Jewish Olympics, celebrate athleticism in the spirit of the Maccabean warriors. Beyond the Jewish world, the Maccabean story has inspired novels, films, and discussions on resistance. From historical epics to fictionalized retellings, their legacy continues to captivate those who admire stories of defiance against overwhelming odds. A legacy that endures. The Maccabees were more than warriors, they were defenders of identity, faith, and freedom. Their struggle was not just about reclaiming a temple, it was about safeguarding a way of life. Their impact continues to be felt in religious observance, historical memory, and the enduring belief that oppression can be resisted. In every generation, new challenges arise that threaten cultural heritage, religious freedom, and human dignity. And in every generation, the Maccabees remind us that resistance is not futile, that even against overwhelming odds, the human spirit has the power to endure, to fight, and to triumph. Chapter 6: Theological Reflections. The Maccabean Revolt was not only a political and military struggle, it was a profound spiritual battle. At its core, the rebellion was about faith, identity, and the unbreakable covenant between the Jewish people and their God. The Maccabees did not fight merely for territorial sovereignty, they fought to preserve the sanctity of their beliefs against a regime that sought to erase them. This chapter explores the theological dimensions of the Maccabean story, focusing on three key themes: faith and divine intervention, the role of martyrdom, and the enduring lessons of perseverance and hope. Faith and divine intervention. Throughout the Maccabean struggle, faith was both a source of strength and a rallying cry. The Maccabees believed that their cause was not simply a human endeavor but a divine mandate. The Seleucid rulers, led by Antiochus IV Epiphanes, sought to force the Jewish people into idolatry, desecrating the temple and outlawing fundamental religious practices. The Maccabees' resistance was fueled by their unwavering belief that God would not abandon his people in their time of trial. Scripture and historical records suggest that many saw divine intervention in their victories. Despite being vastly outnumbered and under-equipped, the Maccabean forces triumphed against one of the most powerful armies of the ancient world. Their successes were attributed to divine favor rather than mere strategy or strength. This belief mirrors earlier biblical narratives, such as the Exodus, where God intervenes on behalf of his people to deliver them from oppression. Faith in divine justice sustained the rebels during their darkest moments. Even when the odds seemed insurmountable, they held fast to the idea that their struggle was not in vain. The Maccabees' trust in God's providence serves as a timeless reminder that faith can be a powerful force in the face of overwhelming adversity. The role of martyrdom in Maccabean thought. The Maccabean period also saw a profound development in the concept of martyrdom. Many Jews chose to suffer and die rather than betray their faith. The most poignant example is found in the story of the mother and her 7 sons, as recounted in 2 Maccabees 7. Faced with the choice between apostasy and death, each son refused to eat the forbidden meat, choosing instead to endure horrific torture. Their mother, rather than urging them to save their lives, encouraged them to remain faithful, believing that their suffering was not meaningless but would be rewarded by God. This episode, along with the execution of Eleazar, an elderly scribe who refused to eat swine's flesh, marked a shift in Jewish theological thought. It introduced the idea that faithfulness unto death was not only an act of devotion but also a testimony to the world. The Maccabean martyrs embodied the conviction that there are values worth dying for, and their sacrifice inspired later generations to remain steadfast in the face of persecution. The concept of martyrdom in the Maccabean era also laid the groundwork for later religious traditions, including early Christianity, which adopted similar themes of suffering for righteousness' sake. The Maccabean martyrs demonstrated that even in death, faith could triumph over tyranny. Their willingness to suffer rather than surrender was a powerful form of resistance, one that resonated far beyond their own time. Lessons on perseverance and hope. At its heart, the Maccabean story is one of perseverance. The Maccabees did not win their freedom overnight, their struggle lasted for years, marked by hardship, loss, and sacrifice. Yet they continued to fight, sustained by the belief that their cause was just and that ultimate victory belonged to those who refused to give up. Their story teaches us that perseverance is not merely about enduring difficulty, it is about maintaining purpose in the face of opposition. The Maccabees knew that their efforts might not bring immediate results, but they trusted that their faithfulness would shape the future. Their hope was not passive, it was an active force that drove them to reclaim their sacred traditions, purify the temple, and re-establish their identity. Hope, as demonstrated by the Maccabees, is more than mere optimism. It is the belief that even in the darkest moments, light can emerge. The rededication of the temple and the miracle of Hanukkah symbolize this idea. Even a single light can defy the darkness, and even a small group of faithful individuals can overcome a mighty empire. The theological reflections of the Maccabean story challenge us to consider our own beliefs about faith, sacrifice, and perseverance. In a world still marked by struggles for religious freedom, justice, and identity, the lessons of the Maccabees remain profoundly relevant. They remind us that resistance is not only about weapons or war, it is about holding firm to one's convictions, even when the world seeks to silence them. The Maccabees' faith, their willingness to suffer for their beliefs, and their enduring hope continue to inspire all who face oppression and hardship. Their story is not just an ancient tale, it is a call to courage, a testament to the power of conviction, and a beacon of hope for all who dare to stand for what is right. Chapter 7: Comparative Resistance Movements. Throughout history, resistance has taken many forms: armed revolts, civil disobedience, cultural defiance, and ideological endurance. The Maccabean Revolt stands as one of the most remarkable examples of defiance against oppression, but it is far from the only one. From ancient revolts to modern movements for justice and freedom, the spirit of resistance has been a defining force in shaping societies and challenging tyranny. This chapter explores how the Maccabees' struggle aligns with other historical resistance movements, draws connections to contemporary social movements, and reflects on the universal themes of struggle and liberation that unite all who dare to resist. The Maccabees and other historical resistance. The Maccabean Revolt, 167 to 160 BCE, was not merely a military campaign, it was a cultural and spiritual battle for survival. The Seleucid Empire, under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, sought to impose Hellenistic customs, outlaw Jewish religious practices, and desecrate the sacred temple in Jerusalem. The Maccabees, a band of Jewish warriors led by Judah Maccabee and his brothers, fought to reclaim their faith, their land, and their identity. Similar resistance movements have emerged throughout history, driven by the same desire for self-determination and the preservation of cultural identity. The Jewish revolt against Rome, 66 to 73 CE, nearly 2 centuries after the Maccabean Revolt, the Jewish people once again rose against a mighty empire. The Great Jewish Revolt against Rome, culminating in the tragic fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, echoed the Maccabees' defiance. Though ultimately unsuccessful, the rebels' determination became a lasting symbol of Jewish resilience. The Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, led by figures like Toussaint Louverture, enslaved Africans in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, rose against their oppressors, overthrowing the colonial system and establishing Haiti as the first free black republic. Like the Maccabees, the Haitian revolutionaries fought against an imperial force that sought to strip them of their dignity, proving that resistance could break the chains of oppression. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, 1943. During the Holocaust, Jewish fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto mounted a desperate and courageous rebellion against Nazi forces. Though they were outnumbered and outgunned, their resistance was an assertion of human dignity in the face of genocide, a modern echo of the Maccabean spirit. These movements, like the Maccabean Revolt, were not only about military victory, they were about defending a way of life, reclaiming identity, and refusing to bow to oppressive power. Modern parallels in social movements. While the Maccabees fought with swords, modern resistance often takes different forms. Social movements across the world continue the fight for justice, freedom, and human dignity. The Civil Rights Movement, 1950s, 1960s, USA. The struggle against racial segregation and discrimination in the United States shares deep thematic parallels with the Maccabean fight for religious freedom. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, though using different methods, embodied the resistance against systemic oppression, much as the Maccabees stood against the Seleucid Empire. The anti-apartheid movement, 20th century, South Africa. The resistance to South Africa's brutal system of racial segregation, led by figures like Nelson Mandela, was a long and arduous struggle. Much like the Maccabees, the anti-apartheid activists endured persecution, imprisonment, and violence, but their resilience ultimately led to liberation. The fight for religious freedom today, around the world, people continue to resist religious persecution. From underground churches in authoritarian regimes to minority faith communities defending their rights, the Maccabee story remains an inspiration for those who refuse to surrender their beliefs. In all these movements, the core principle remains the same: the refusal to accept injustice. Whether through armed rebellion, peaceful protest, or legal reform, resistance takes many forms, but its essence, defending identity and human dignity, remains unchanged. The universal themes of struggle and liberation. At the heart of all resistance movements lies a common thread: the belief that some things are worth fighting for, even against overwhelming odds. The Maccabees did not rebel merely for political power, they fought for the right to live and worship according to their faith. Their story resonates across cultures and eras because it embodies universal themes. The power of faith and conviction, whether religious, ideological, or moral, resistance often begins with a deep belief in something greater than oneself. The Maccabees clung to their faith, just as other resistance leaders have held onto their principles in the face of persecution. The struggle for identity. Oppressors throughout history have attempted to erase cultures, languages, and traditions. The Maccabees' fight to preserve Jewish identity mirrors countless other battles for cultural survival. The cost of freedom. Resistance often comes at great personal and collective sacrifice. The Maccabees lost lives, endured hardships, and faced betrayal, just as revolutionaries, activists, and freedom fighters have throughout history. Hope beyond oppression. The story of the Maccabees, like other resistance movements, teaches that oppression is never the final word. Whether through victory or enduring legacy, those who resist injustice shape the future. The Maccabean struggle is more than an ancient story, it is a mirror reflecting the human condition. From biblical times to the modern world, the fight for justice continues. The question remains: how will we carry the spirit of resistance forward? Chapter 8, Conclusion, Reflections on Resistance. History is more than a record of what has been, it is a guide for what can be. The story of the Maccabees is not merely an episode of ancient Jewish history, it is a testament to the enduring power of faith, resilience, and the unyielding human will to resist oppression. Their struggle against the mighty Seleucid Empire was not only a fight for political autonomy but a battle to preserve identity, tradition, and the right to live according to one's beliefs. As we conclude this exploration of the Maccabean story, three essential themes emerge: the enduring spirit of the Maccabees, the lessons their resistance offers to future generations, and the continued relevance of their struggle in the modern world. The enduring spirit of the Maccabees. The Maccabees' victory was not just a military triumph but a moral and spiritual one. Their resistance went beyond the battlefield, it was deeply rooted in an unwavering commitment to their faith and way of life. Despite being vastly outnumbered and facing near certain defeat, they chose to fight, believing that preserving their identity was worth any sacrifice. Their courage was not fueled by power or ambition but by an unshakable conviction that some things are worth fighting for, even against overwhelming odds. This is what makes their story timeless. The spirit of the Maccabees is the spirit of all who refuse to be crushed by tyranny, all who stand firm in the face of adversity, and all who choose faith over fear. The Hasmonean dynasty that followed their victory was far from perfect, and political challenges remained. Yet, the impact of the Maccabean Revolt went beyond their immediate rule. It rekindled the Jewish people's sense of autonomy and reinforced the idea that resistance, even in the face of great empires, is not futile. Their legacy endured, inspiring future revolts, shaping Jewish identity, and influencing resistance movements throughout history. Lessons for future generations. The Maccabean story teaches us that resistance is not solely about warfare, it is about preserving values, identity, and truth, even when powerful forces seek to erase them. Their struggle offers several key lessons. The power of conviction. The Maccabees remind us that real strength does not come from numbers or weapons but from conviction. When people are deeply connected to their beliefs, they can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Faith as a form of resistance, the Seleucid Empire did not simply seek to rule the Jewish people, it sought to erase their traditions, assimilate them, and make them forget who they were. The Maccabees understood that faith itself can be an act of defiance, and their willingness to risk everything to maintain their traditions is a powerful example for all who struggle to preserve their identities. The cost of freedom, the Maccabean Revolt was not won easily. It required sacrifice, unity, and relentless perseverance. Freedom is never handed down freely, it must be defended, often at great cost. This lesson echoes throughout history and remains true today. The danger of complacency. Before the revolt, many within the Jewish community had accepted foreign rule and cultural assimilation as inevitable. The Maccabean story reminds us that tyranny thrives when good people remain silent. Their uprising was not just a reaction to oppression, it was a wake-up call that change begins when people refuse to accept injustice as the status quo. The relevance of the Maccabean story today. The Maccabean struggle is not just an ancient tale, it is a story that continues to resonate in the modern world. In every era, there are those who seek to erase cultures, suppress beliefs, and impose uniformity through force. Yet, time and again, history has shown that people who are willing to resist, through faith, courage, and determination, can defy even the most powerful empires. Their story speaks to oppressed communities fighting to preserve their heritage, to individuals standing up for their principles despite pressure to conform, and to anyone who faces persecution for their beliefs. The Maccabees' defiance echoes in the voices of those who refuse to be silenced, from political dissidents to religious minorities, from human rights activists to those fighting for justice in their own societies. The celebration of Hanukkah, born from the Maccabean victory, continues to serve as a symbol of hope and resilience. The menorah, once rekindled in the desecrated temple, stands as a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can be restored. The flames of that menorah are more than a commemoration, they are a call to action, urging each generation to uphold the values of faith, freedom, and resistance against oppression. A legacy that lives on. The Maccabean story is not just history, it is a challenge to each of us. What do we stand for? What will we fight to preserve? How will we ensure that the lessons of the past guide our future? Resistance takes many forms. It is found in the quiet defiance of those who refuse to conform, in the resilience of those who rebuild after devastation, and in the courage of those who fight for justice, even when the odds seem impossible. The Maccabees remind us that we are not powerless. That even in the face of overwhelming opposition, resistance is possible. And that the struggle for truth, for freedom, and for identity is never in vain. Their story lives on in all who dare to stand. It lives on in us. Questions and answers. Chapter 1. Historical context of the Maccabean Revolt. 1. How did the rise of Hellenism affect Jewish society under Seleucid rule? Answer. Hellenism, introduced by Alexander the Great and continued by the Seleucid Empire, promoted Greek language, customs, and religious practices, often at the expense of local traditions. While some Jews embraced Hellenistic culture, others resisted, seeing it as a direct threat to Jewish identity and religious practices. Under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, this cultural influence turned into outright persecution, as Jewish religious practices were outlawed and the temple in Jerusalem was desecrated. 2. What role did Antiochus IV Epiphanes play in the events leading to the Maccabean Revolt? Answer. Antiochus IV sought to enforce Hellenization aggressively, outlawing Jewish religious practices, defiling the temple by sacrificing pigs on the altar, and punishing those who observed the Torah. His oppressive policies provoked widespread outrage and resistance, ultimately sparking the Maccabean Revolt. 3. Who were the key figures in the Maccabean narrative, and how did they shape the revolt? Answer. Mattathias initiated the rebellion by refusing to obey Antiochus IV's decrees and calling for armed resistance. Judah Maccabee emerged as the military leader, employing guerrilla warfare tactics to defeat the Seleucid forces. Jonathan and Simon continued the struggle after Judah's death, securing political independence and establishing the Hasmonean dynasty. Chapter 2. The Maccabean family. 4. Why was Mattathias' refusal to sacrifice to pagan gods a turning point in Jewish resistance? Answer. Mattathias' act of defiance symbolized a refusal to assimilate or abandon Jewish faith under pressure. By killing a Jew who complied with the Seleucid decree and an officer enforcing it, he set the stage for active resistance rather than passive submission. His leadership rallied others to the cause. 5. How did Judah Maccabee's leadership contribute to the success of the revolt? Answer. Judah was a skilled strategist and charismatic leader who effectively organized guerrilla warfare against the vastly superior Seleucid army. His ability to unite various factions within Jewish society and leverage tactical advantages, such as ambushes and surprise attacks, allowed the Maccabees to reclaim Jerusalem and rededicate the temple. 6. What were Jonathan and Simon's contributions to the Hasmonean state? Answer. After Judah's death, Jonathan and Simon transitioned the movement from military struggle to political consolidation. Jonathan negotiated with rival Seleucid rulers to gain political legitimacy, while Simon established Jewish autonomy, laying the foundation for the Hasmonean dynasty. Chapter 3. The nature of resistance. 7. How did the Maccabees balance religious and political resistance? Answer. The Maccabees initially framed their struggle as a defense of Jewish religious freedom. However, as the conflict progressed, it also became a fight for political sovereignty. Their resistance was both a spiritual battle against forced Hellenization and a nationalistic fight against foreign rule. 8. What strategies made the Maccabean resistance effective against the superior Seleucid forces? Answer. The Maccabees used guerrilla warfare, ambush tactics, and deep knowledge of the terrain to compensate for their lack of numbers and resources. They attacked Seleucid supply lines, used hit-and-run tactics, and relied on mobility to avoid direct confrontation with larger enemy forces. 9. How did guerrilla warfare impact the outcome of the revolt? Answer. Guerrilla tactics allowed the Maccabees to prolong the conflict, gradually wearing down the Seleucid forces. By avoiding large-scale battles and leveraging surprise attacks, they disrupted the empire's control over Judea and ultimately forced the Seleucids to negotiate. Chapter 4. The significance of the Hanukkah miracle. 10. Why did the rededication of the temple hold such deep symbolic meaning? Answer. The temple was the spiritual heart of Jewish worship, and its defilement represented not just political subjugation but an existential threat to Jewish identity. Its rededication symbolized divine restoration, national revival, and the triumph of faith over oppression. 11. What is the significance of the Hanukkah oil miracle in Jewish tradition? Answer. The story of the oil, which burned for 8 days instead of 1, symbolizes divine intervention and the idea that perseverance in faith leads to miraculous outcomes. It reinforces the theme that the Jewish people's survival is not only due to military victories but also spiritual endurance. 12. How does Hanukkah serve as a symbol of resistance? Answer. Hanukkah commemorates both physical and spiritual survival. The festival reminds Jews of their ancestors' willingness to fight for their faith and encourages resilience in the face of adversity, making it relevant throughout Jewish history and in modern struggles for religious freedom. Chapter 5. The Maccabean Legacy. 13. How did the Maccabean Revolt shape Jewish identity? Answer. The revolt reinforced the importance of religious self-determination and set a precedent for Jewish resistance against oppression. It contributed to a collective memory of struggle and survival, influencing later Jewish uprisings, such as the Bar Kokhba Revolt. 14. What later resistance movements were inspired by the Maccabees? Answer. The Maccabees inspired various Jewish resistance movements, including the Zealots during the Roman occupation and even Jewish partisans during World War II. Their story continues to be a symbol of defiance against oppression in broader historical and cultural contexts. Chapter 6. Theological Reflections. 15. What role did faith play in the Maccabean Revolt? Answer. Faith was central to the Maccabees' resistance. They saw their struggle not merely as a political fight but as a divine mission to uphold the covenant with God. Their belief that divine intervention was on their side strengthened their resolve. 16. How did martyrdom influence Maccabean thought? Answer. Martyrdom, exemplified by stories like that of Hannah and her 7 sons, reinforced the idea that remaining faithful was more important than life itself. This concept later influenced Jewish and Christian traditions on sacrifice and perseverance in the face of persecution. Chapter 7. Comparative Resistance Movements. 17. How does the Maccabean Revolt compare to other historical resistance movements? Answer. Similar to revolts against colonial rule, the Maccabean struggle combined religious, cultural, and political resistance. It shares parallels with movements such as the American Revolution and the fight against apartheid in South Africa, where oppressed groups resisted assimilation and fought for self-determination. 18. What modern social movements reflect the themes of the Maccabean story? Answer. Movements advocating for religious freedom, human rights, and cultural preservation, such as Tibetan resistance against Chinese rule or indigenous movements worldwide, reflect the Maccabean spirit of defying oppressive forces to maintain identity and autonomy. Chapter 8. Conclusion. Reflections on resistance. 19. What makes the Maccabean spirit enduring? Answer. The Maccabean story remains relevant because it speaks to the universal struggle for freedom, the power of conviction, and the necessity of standing up against injustice, themes that transcend time and culture. 20. What lessons from the Maccabees can be applied today? Answer. The Maccabees teach that resistance requires courage, faith, and persistence. Whether in the fight for religious rights, political freedom, or social justice, their legacy reminds us that even against overwhelming odds, defiance can lead to transformation. Block quotes and practical applications. Chapter 1. Historical context of the Maccabean Revolt. Block quote. The Maccabean Revolt was not just a political struggle, it was a deeply religious movement, driven by the desire to preserve Jewish identity and faith in the face of Hellenistic influence. Practical applications. Understand the significance of cultural preservation in the face of outside pressures, whether religious or political. Recognize the importance of leadership in times of societal conflict, as exemplified by key figures in the Maccabean Revolt. Reflect on how historical struggles shape modern identity and the ongoing battle for religious and cultural integrity. Chapter 2. The Maccabean Family. Block quote. It was the courage of one family that sparked a revolution. The Maccabees' legacy reminds us that even in the darkest times, a small group with conviction can change the course of history. Practical applications. Consider the power of family unity and commitment to a cause, and how it can inspire wider movements. Reflect on the value of leadership in times of crisis, as demonstrated by Judah Maccabee and his brothers. Recognize the need for courage and action in the face of adversity, drawing inspiration from Mattathias' call to arms. Chapter 3. The nature of resistance. Block quote. True resistance is not only about fighting the external enemy, it's about preserving what is essential to one's identity and values. Practical applications. Assess how we resist forces that threaten our core values in our personal lives. Consider the role of strategy and careful planning in overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. Embrace the lessons of perseverance and adaptability found in guerrilla warfare tactics, applying them to modern struggles. Chapter 4. The significance of the Hanukkah miracle. Block quote. The miracle of Hanukkah stands as a testament to divine intervention in times of need, a reminder that even when all seems lost, hope can reignite and empower us. Practical applications. Reflect on the power of faith in times of hardship, and how small acts can lead to great outcomes. Embrace gratitude in moments of unexpected blessings, recognizing them as miracles in everyday life. Use the festival of Hanukkah as an opportunity to strengthen your spiritual practice and connection to your heritage. Chapter 5. The Maccabean Legacy. Block quote. The Maccabees left a lasting mark not only on Jewish identity but on the broader landscape of resistance movements throughout history. Practical applications. Recognize the long-lasting impact that resistance movements have on cultural and religious identity. Draw parallels between the Maccabean legacy and contemporary struggles for justice and freedom. Encourage the younger generation to study past movements and use them as inspiration for their own causes. Chapter 6. Theological Reflections. Block quote. In the Maccabean story, faith is not passive, it is an active trust in God's provision and power in times of trial. Practical applications. Reflect on the role of faith in overcoming personal struggles and challenges. Understand that perseverance, coupled with faith, often leads to spiritual and practical victories. Embrace martyrdom as a means of staying true to your convictions, even in the face of great personal sacrifice. Chapter 7, Comparative Resistance Movements Block Quote. The struggles of the Maccabees are not unique to one time or place, yet they echo in the resistance movements of every generation, united by the pursuit of justice and freedom. Practical applications. Look for commonalities in the fight for justice across different times and cultures. Analyze how modern social movements can learn from the strategies of past resistance groups. Apply the universal lessons of struggle and liberation to your personal fight for what is right and just. Chapter 8, Conclusion, Reflections on Resistance Block Quote. The spirit of the Maccabees is a timeless reminder that resistance is not merely a physical struggle but a spiritual and moral one that shapes the future. Practical applications. Cultivate a spirit of resilience and resistance, grounded in faith and moral conviction. Consider how the Maccabean story informs our understanding of contemporary struggles for freedom and justice. Encourage future generations to carry the lessons of the Maccabees, applying them to the challenges of their time. Reverend Virgilio Almario de las Armas is a minister of the gospel, Bible teacher, writer, and vlogger. He is the author of numerous inspirational and theological works, including Living in Luxury, The Secret of the First World Prosperity, and After All, What Matters Most is Spiritual Things, Finding Meaning in a World of Distractions. His ebooks are available for free, supported by donations. He also shares biblical insights through his Facebook devotional program and YouTube messages. In Reflections on Resistance, the Maccabean Story, Reverend de las Armas explores the courage and faith of the Maccabees, drawing parallels to modern spiritual battles. Through historical reflection and biblical interpretation, he inspires readers to stand firm in their faith amidst opposition.